Welcome to the final installment of Figure Drawing Made Easy with INKPULP Instruction. I'm your host, Shawn Crystal. In this video, we're going to cover an introduction to foreshortening and how to use ellipses and cylinders to aid in one of the most difficult areas of figure drawing. What we're going to tackle today is a question, probably the most asked question. How do you handle foreshortening? Now, foreshortening can be in extreme situations like real dynamic comic book superhero posing, but foreshortening occurs in every pose as well. So we're going to use the technique of ellipses and cylinders to get a real good understanding. What is an ellipse and how does it show depth? So let's quick go over the cylinder thing. So a cylinder is really exactly what you think it is. Just a cylinder. A can is a cylinder. Now, what's great about the cylinder is no matter what way you're presenting it, it's already telling you the perspective of the situation. So the fact that I can see the top of this cylinder means I am looking down on it. Boop, 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 boop. So it's by nature, it's dealing with perspective, and that's what foreshortening really is. So what we want to do is really start thinking about these forms. So as the cylinder comes towards you, it moves towards a vanishing point up here, the cylinder, and opens up. So this simple shape is telling you foreshortening is occurring because I can see into this. And then, of course, no matter what direction you're putting it in, you'll work on the perspective of that. Now let's talk about how that applies to the figure. In looking at this figure, this leg is moving towards us in space slightly. It's not a really dynamic foreshortening, but it is moving towards us. So the great thing here is you have this crease of the hip joint right here. And just that ellipse, because an ellipse is that part of the cylinder, it's the cross contour of the cylinder. Just that ellipse starts to tell us that this appendage is moving towards us. All right? And then this part of the leg down here, based on what I can see in the camera, is it's pretty straight and bending slightly away from us. So it's heading down like that. So if we use cross contours to further describe, use the ellipses, you can start to see the foreshortening occurring. Not dynamic foreshortening, but it's foreshortening. This leg, conversely, is moving away from us. So these ellipses help tell us that's moving away from us. And it's continually moving away from us into space. Okay? And the same with the arms. So this arm is moving slightly towards us. And then bending slightly to move slightly away from us. This arm is consistently moving away from us. All right, so adding those ellipses helps describe the limbs and their perspective and address foreshortening. So if we take this idea of ellipses and cylinders, it can really help with not just the limbs, but let's say the head. If you're really looking up at the head, has a cylindrical form, neck coming off of it, nose, mouth, Here's, you can see how using those cylinders can help you, and the ellipses, describe the foreshortening on that. And the same thing goes for the torso. Let's go back to our original figure drawing. So again, the head here, if we really use the cylinders and the ellipses and the perspective of the situation, you can see that. And the same thing goes for the torso. Okay, so it can really capture the foreshortening on that. And if then the big question I get is, how do you do dynamic foreshortening? And it's using those principles. So if you've got something like a Spider-Man reaching out towards you, you can really use those ellipses. And you can see you can get some real extreme, exaggerated foreshortening using a simple tool. The other part of fleshing out the limbs is the hands and the feet. And these are very complicated parts of the anatomy, and that's another popular question. How do you draw better hands and feet? Simple shapes. If there's anything I want you to take away from this whole video series, is there are these simple shapes that are the best tools you can use to solve these problems. So let's talk about the simple shapes of the hands and the feet.
How can I apply this shape-based information to drawing feet?
All right, so the feet I like to think of as a wedge. That is this sort of shape. And thinking about this sort of shape really helps you handle the perspective of it. Because here you've got a 3/4 angle. If you're going to see the bottom of it, and we're looking up at the figure, we can see into the bottom of the wedge, and so on. And there is some proper anatomy you can build on top of this, but remember, this video series is really focused on gesture. So this shape is really all you need to understand is this wedge for the foot.
How can I apply this shape-based information to drawing hands?
And then for the hand, it's another shape. I think it makes you can think of the hand as almost like a box form. Okay, so if this is my palm, I've got my thumb extending off of it and my fingers extending off there. You can see how that box form works. Make sure when you're drawing the hand, you're always using this arch. All right, and these are how your knuckles work. Your middle finger is the tallest. These two fingers are kind of in line, and your pinky's always the lowest. So this is obviously an under part, the palm, and then I like to use these forms to show the pads of the tips of the fingers. It helps with the gesture. And then from the top of the hand, same sort of thing. And then that will obviously lock into the wrist joint, which we've covered already. And then in perspective, if we just keep it in mind that it's a box form, we can have the hand reaching out to you. And here we will use ellipses and cylinders per finger. We can do the same thing for the thumb. So if we use these simple shapes, they can really help us tackle a very complicated piece of the anatomy. So let's apply that to our figure. So in looking at the hand of the figure here, I can see some of this side of the box, and then it fades away. So you get one finger off there, and this finger off there. Let's talk about the wedge of the foot. Here, I can see a little bit of that side. And it's really nice when dealing with the toes to bend that shape out that way. Okay? And then that locks right in to the ankle joint. And then this foot is very complicated, but using our tool of the wedge form, we can solve that problem. And then this hand you can't see much of, but you can see some of the underside of the box. So those shapes should help you with hands and feet.
Hi, my name is Shawn Crystal. I'm a comic book artist who's been drawing for Marvel and DC Comics for the past 20 years, and I'm also an educator. I built the Sequential Art department at SCAD in Atlanta with my good friend Pat Quinn. I ran that department and taught every class in that department for about 10 years. After I left teaching, I dedicated myself to drawing comics full-time. After a few years, I missed teaching, and I decided I wanted to create my own online comic book art school. INKPULP Instruction is designed to celebrate and teach the craft of comic book art. It is a series of videos and bite-sized tutorials that will instruct the beginning comic book artist as well as the seasoned pro. It is the best online resource for learning sequential art. Keep craft alive. Join INKPULP Instruction now.